Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am joined today, once again, a comparable, I think, comparison here, even though those words mean the same thing. The Cheech to my Chong, A1, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, aside from being up in smoke and, you know, we're not doing any of the wacky tobacco, but you wouldn't know it if people would have heard us off the air just a few seconds ago because we're laughing. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, it's a lovely day. I'm doing good. How you doing?
You know, you know what? Let's talk about something here. Let's be a little candid. We're talking about Cheech and Chong, and, you know, they spoke about casually doing drugs. Am I right? And I think we were justified with our last show about Antonio Brown almost a week ago that he's definitely on something or just out there. I think the guy has completely lost his mind now, but I don't know that we want to consume an entire episode speaking about all of the same things that we already spoke about. We tried to decipher, what does this guy want? He's already done everything. He's sending out cryptic tweets once again, and he's answering, I don't know if he's really answering questions, but he's dropping a few bombs on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly is going on with him, but, you know, I think we've given him the new nom de plume of Ronald Whack-A-Mole Ocean, because he's a wackadoodle. He's gone wackadoodle.
I mean, yeah, the mustache. I mean, he had the hairstyle thing kind of going. I think this season, I don't remember him having like a lot of. I mean, I'm not talking about like a fade or something etched in the side of his head. I mean, he's like gone with these. He's gone real eccentric, I guess is the word, with the coats. Maybe I don't know if they're real fur coats, because then you'd have even more enemies out there on Twitter. Aside from, we're not going to cover all of his tweets, but just something that he had sent out most recently was "Be clear or be misunderstood," and I think just about everyone that commented on this is like, do you even understand what you're tweeting out? Speak the English, I think is the way it worked. What was that, Chris Tucker from Rush Hour? Speak the English or something like that.
Speak the English. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? No, that's the problem. I don't think we do.
Do you understand the words that are coming off my Twitter? Like, no, absolutely not. But anyways, we're going to talk, we're going to digress from that, because we could talk till we're blue in the face, and we already have, about where his thought process is. I think it's you know, like watching my 4 or 5 year olds at these birthday parties trying to blindfold themselves and hit a piñata. That's about where his what do you want to say, logic is coming from these days. You just never know what's going to be the next. And maybe even throwing darts to the board or pintail on the donkey. Just pick one. I think they all fit the profile there. We've talked about what can the Steelers get, what will they realistically get, you know, just about every angle on this, aside from, well, if they lose Antonio Brown, where can they go from there? Mark Cabali just not too long ago talking about maybe the Steelers may entertain someone like Golden Tate as a free agent. Right price, I wouldn't be, you know, upset with that. Or, once again, drafting a wide receiver. But before you go and dig into the draft, I know you guys have been doing the mock drafts, and I don't like to get into this until combine time. I like to see who they're talking to. I like to see who stands out. One thing we can do is go back and see how these drafts have worked. Because if you're going to draft a guy, you got to see if they've done decently in drafting. And of course, you know, Kevin Colbert should have been fired, you know, like 2 decades ago or whenever he got his job. What was that, 2001, when he was officially named GM? Yeah, he had terrible drafts. But let's go back. Let's rewind here. I'm going to go back to 5 years, 5 drafts ago, and let's retroactively grade this. I guess we could give these grades A through F. I guess that's what are they still doing that in school, or have they just like completely gone to participation trophies there too? I'm not sure. I guess it depends on where you're at. But I mean, we could go back and look. Do we want to do this first round through 7th round, or do we want to go backwards? I mean, this could get real interesting here. But actually, you know what? We're going to find out. Not too. You don't really do too bad with the draft. I think it's just more or less some players don't work out or they're not right fits, and this is going to sound like us defending Kevin Colbert, but you know what? It is. Never mind. It is. we're drinking the bias juice.
Yeah, the draft is always a crapshoot. First of all, there is no such thing, Ryan Leaf, cough cough, as a sure thing. So, it's a crapshoot, and the idea is hopefully they hit more often than they miss. And the key, of course, is hitting in the first, top tier of the draft, the first 2, 3, 4 rounds maybe. Once you get to the 5th round, down to the 7th round, if you get something out of that, great. You found the needle in the haystack, the diamond in the rough, whatever saying you so choose to use. But that's pure dumb luck, in my opinion, because you just don't know. When you're drafting those guys at that point, you're looking at potential, and potential more often than not it doesn't pan out. So when we look at this, the idea is to see how often they swing and miss early. It's hard to give them a judge on how often they swing and miss late.
Yeah, because they're all basically you're kind of they're flyers. I mean, this is why there's so many undrafted players that end up making it in the league as well, just based on and everybody's trying to guess where people are going to go, and it's all based on all these measurements and all this other stuff. I mean, if we were going back to the 2013 draft, we're going to do 2014 on this episode. If we were going back to 2013, I mean, the big swing and a miss, as everyone knows, is Jarvis Jones. I mean, would Le'Veon Bell, in retrospect, go pick 48? You know what I mean? And then you're looking at some of these other guys. Of course, that is one of the best drafts that Kevin Colbert's had, because in the 4th round he took the GOAT Landry Jones. But aside from that, we're going to look at 2014. So I just had to throw that in there, Brian. You know what? How many starters? How many starters when you're drafting? How many starters? Ideally, you want them all to start, but realistically, how many starters in order for any draft to be considered a successful draft? I mean, what's your over? I'm going to say 1.5. If you get contributors, 3 contributors, I'd say, and that would include a starter, probably one solid starter. You got to at least get one solid starter, if not 2. And this is talking about the Steelers here. I mean, there's other teams in dire need, like the Miami Dolphins, for example, that need to get several starters this year. The Raiders, for example, the Cardinals. Those guys, if they're going to build through the draft, they got to go get guys that are going to be, solid, almost like playing 80% of the snaps type players. The Steelers, I think, with the way they've been built over the years through the draft and the way that their roster is shaped right now, I don't think they have to go through that same kind of they're not looking for that same kind of depth, so to speak. And if a few guys turn out as role players, so be it. I don't know. How many do you think? I say 1.5, because I think if you get 2, that's great. And if you just end up getting 1, but the next year you get 2, I think that's also good. I don't think you could just get 1 every year and still be successful.
Now, I think, look, I mean, call it, if you want to say pass fail on a draft, I'll go with 1.5 to 2. An A draft for me, a top level draft for me, would be starters and a contributor or more. Anything above that is an A, and then you just go down from there. And if you get skunked out of a draft, well, then that's trouble. I'll go with that.
How many did you say? It cut out for a second. I think I lost you.
I said if you're going to be an A level draft, right? If we're going to grade this on a scale, to me, an A draft, you've got to have maybe 2 starters come out of it and a contributor. I mean, that's anything above that is a higher grade, an A plus. But start that as that qualifies you as an A, and then go down from there. And if you flub out, you got an F.
Yeah, well, of course. And I mean, you see some of that. And of course, the reason we're not going back to 2013, where you would probably say there would be an F or so. 2014 is, you go back 5 years. These are some of the players that may be beyond the rookie contract now. And you're also, and then proceeding into from there to present day, or at least the most recent draft being in 2018, you could kind of gauge a little bit better now. These are the guys that are still on the roster, and et cetera, et cetera. Because right now, if you go back and look at 2013, who cares about Jarvis Jones or Marcus Wheaton or Shamarko Thomas or Landry Jones? Oh, I care about Landry Jones, but Terry Hawthorne, Justin Brown. I mean, the only guy here is still, Bell, with all the drama and stuff, obviously, but Vince Williams is the only one. I mean, what good does it do to really go back and grade that when you're going back 6 drafts? It's well beyond the lifespan of an NFL player. So the 2014 draft going back, and there is right in the first round, and this is going to be interesting to see, what we're going to – I don't even know what we're going to say about this right now, because how do you grade Ryan Shazier as far as a pick? I would like to say, that's a pretty top-level pick. I hate the letters for the grading thing. I like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'd say thumbs up. A lot easier to do that. When you assign a letter to him, well, he's not a C, but we always talk about the best ability being availability. And Ryan Shazier was not available last year. You're not sure if he's going to be available this upcoming season. You're not sure if he's ever going to play football again, even though for all intents and purposes, there's another one of those cliches, man. Intents and purposes. Some people get that one wrong. For those of you who've been following along and keeping score at home, we got one right. Anyways, Ryan Shazier, his career is really, I would say it's an incomplete grade overall. And he was banged up a lot when he, early on as a rookie in that. A lot of people were criticizing and saying he was made of glass. And I don't know where that weighs in, because he really looked like he was going to be a playmaker. He had however many interceptions in a game in a row, the previous season where he played. Really, he was a Pro Bowl player finally. Everything was on the upward trend. So if I have to go with the window of which he played as far as being a first-round pick, I would never say that is a wasted pick. I would have to maybe give him a B just based on availability. Otherwise, I think if he never got hurt, this would probably be an A.
Yeah, see, I'm going to give him the A because, to me, nagging injuries are one thing, right? If you're constantly tweaking a hammy, you're constantly doing, muscle tears, muscle pulls, these soft tissue injuries. But the injury that Shazier suffered is such a freak, one-off kind of a thing that clearly wasn't his, there's no way to predict it. And what you got here is you got a player that developed slowly, but at the same time, was all the rage we were talking about. Remember when he came in, he was one of the first guys to start as a rookie. That was all is he going to start? Oh my gosh, he's going to start in this defense. He's going to start as a rookie. That can't be. That doesn't happen ever. But yet, here he was. And by the time, he got injured, you're talking about an all-pro caliber player who the defense and the fact that they still truly have not fully recovered from his loss tells you the quality of the player. So to me, it's an A pick. It was definitely a hit. The fact that it didn't work out or may not work out, and we don't know. I mean, we all hope that everything comes together, but man, it's hard. It's hard to imagine him coming back to play at the form in which he once played. I'm just happy he's functional and has that in the back of his mind as a possibility, even if he never achieves it. But to me, this was a solid pick, and one that, in all likelihood, should have. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of back in the day, Gabe Rivera, the nose tackle they drafted that got hurt, because it was a pick that could have transformed the defense, and I think that's what Shazier eventually was going to do, and injury cut that all short, and it was it just didn't come to fruition, and it's unfortunate, but I don't have any fault with this pick at all. I would have done it again and again and again at the place where they were who is available. And I know that there'll be people who will go, "Oh, C.J. Mosley," and I will say I'd still rather have Ryan Shazier. So,
did you see that? I know you saw this, and you were wondering how the Pro Football Focus Wizards came up with the alchemy of, didn't L.J. Fort grade out higher than C.J. Mosley? Or just almost in this, I mean, isn't that crazy? And it was only by like a point or something, point and a half point, something like that. I know we shared it over on our Twitter account several days ago. I looked at that, like, I always talk about looking at things like an owl with the head sideways and like, who graded this? LJ Fort higher than CJ Mosley? That's all you need to know. The reason I said B is just for the missed time, and even as a rookie.
Oh, absolutely. I understand.
I mean, I pulled it up. I mean, he played the first 3 games. He started, and then he was gone until week 8. Played 8 and 9, and then was gone again until week 13. So 9 games as a rookie. That was that's a little rough there. And then he was pretty much solid. He played 12 games. The next 2 seasons or next 3 seasons, 12 games, actually 13, but the 12 is a starter. So a dozen in each of those years. So 46 games, 41 starts, and you do the math, 60 out of 64 possible regular season games, but maybe I'll even go as far as a B+, because you know what? When he rocks Jeremy Hill and gets the Steelers back into that Bengals playoff game, I mean, he was capable of being a game changer, and that's something that the team will surely miss. I was trying to find, you were talking about who else was still around. Mosley went 2 picks later, of course, but Zach Martin, a guard for Dallas. Calvin Pryor to the Jets, already kind of flamed out. Brandon Cooks bouncing around. Clinton Dix bouncing around. Johnny Manziel at 22. That one's kind of interesting. Remember when everyone was pretty much mocking Darqueze Dennard to the Steelers in that spot too? And he's basically just been a nickel corner his whole career. I mean, he's still with Cincinnati, but doesn't really jump off the page as a first-round pick by any means. So, nope. I mean, you look around at some of this. Kelvin Benjamin is another one that kind of goes into that category, and then Teddy Bridgewater at the end of that round, and it's just kind of like, okay, is there really anything bad there? The only one, I know you're going to agree with this, is the one you probably had your eyes on. There were a lot of people that were mocking players like Odell Beckham, for example, pick 12 to the Giants. But it was that 13th pick to the Rams that you were hoping was going to go, okay, can he get past the Rams, get past the Bears, and fall to the Steelers? And this was probably the only one where I would have any type of regrets if maybe they went a different direction and this player was available, and that's Aaron Donald. And man, would he have he would have been something else. And that's something where, you're watching on draft day, as you usually are, and you got a couple guys earmarked as some of your favorites. And I mean, let's not forget the Browns drafted Justin Gilbert 8th overall in the same draft. I mean, if Donald would have fell into their lap, that would have been something else. And especially since he was a guy who went to Pitt for his college career, that would have been just as amazing. Let's talk about somebody else on the defensive line there, Brian. The second round, pick 46 overall. Someone that's been, pretty much, what do you want to say? I don't want to say Iron Man, but entrenched as a starter. Defensive end, Stephon Tuitt. He's already into his second contract. And I feel this was a steal for the second round. In fact, when they made the Tuitt pick, I forgot he was even still on the board.
It was. The only reason he was there, of course, is because he was injured at Notre Dame, and it caused his stock to slide a little bit because he underperformed in his final year there. But it was. We were excited about it when it happened, and thought it was a good, solid pick. I will tell you that I am. While I am in no way disappointed with what Stephon Tuitt has brought to the team, it's the consistency of the flashes that is still somewhat troubling to me. When the guy is on, he is just absolutely dominant, and it can't be blocked. He blows through offensive lines. But and we've talked about this before, I just don't see it enough. And whereas there would have been a point in time, I think he's a good quality starter, right? But he's not playing at the level that I think we hoped he would be. And so while I'm glad he's there, I don't think I would go back and not pick him. I think it would be crazy not to. In hindsight, I'm looking at this as a solid B more than an A, but it's more because the production has been hit and miss with him.
By no means do I feel a B is a bad grade. I mean, not everything's going to be an A, and I agree with you. Everybody would want Tuitt to be Cam Hayward. The only difference is it took Cam Hayward many years to be Cam Hayward. So I'm not belaboring on that. I think Tuitt has been fine. I mean, even Brett Kiesel took a while to come around and be Brett Kiesel. And I mean, you look at some of the players that went afterward. I was kind of like joking about this too. Bishop Sankey, remember, he was the first running back to go in this draft. Bishop Sankey followed up by Jeremy Hill, no less. Two guys snake bitten with a lot of injuries. Then you got Carlos Hyde. Where else would you have gone with some of this? I mean, Coney Ely, Allen Robinson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Jarvis Landry in the second round, no less. Not that the Steelers had a great need for wide receiver. They definitely had to go defense in 2014, no doubt. And they definitely needed help on that defensive line, seeing, there were guys, they were getting long in the tooth. I think, Kiesel played through 2015, I believe. So they were looking ahead there, as they had in the past when they took Hayward, when they even took Ziggy Hood, for that matter. I was laughing about the thing I saw Bishop Sankey's name here because he was supposed to be playing in the AAF, and he got hurt. I forgot which team he was supposed to be with. Oh, speaking of which, Brian, you know what? We were talking about this earlier. I don't know why it took 2 weeks for me to connect the dots, but when I was watching my adopted team, I guess right now is the Birmingham Iron and Steel, and they said that they're affiliated with the Steelers. And well, Tim Lewis, head coach there, actually was a defensive backs coach, 2 different stints under Bill Cowher, I believe, through the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, and we completely missed that on the Alliance of American Football show that we did a week or two ago with former Steelers involved. So more in spirit, and we saw Why Not West, Wesley Saunders make some plays out there too. So Jamar Summers, a guy I was very high on last training camp, he's balling, man. I'm absolutely loving it. So, but anyways, my Tuitt grade is going back to that. I'm going to go with a B as well. And I don't see where they could possibly go any different with. I look at the names that were immediately picked after. I even look at some of the names that were just picked before, because it's like, would you have bumped any of these guys up to the Steelers in the first round? And I'm like, nah. Who? Derek Carr, Joel Bitonio, not necessarily maybe the needs that they had in mind, especially maybe you're trying to guess where other teams have people on their boards and how much they like them too. So I'm completely okay with this. You definitely have Jarvis Landry on here. You have Devontae Adams, but that's not the needs where the Steelers needed them. And as we go through this draft too, you're going to see why they didn't go wide receiver at this particular point, because they had other guys on their board. We'll get to that in 1 second. I don't know if you got any more to say about our guy Stephon Tuitt here. I like him as a B, definitely a starter. So the 2 starters out of this draft already, we're already trending towards this being a successful draft.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I don't, as much as I have some disappointment in what Stephon Tuitt has brought, because I think my expectations were much higher. It does not belittle what he has done. Has he played at an all-pro level? No, but he has been a consistent, solid starter who has had flashes of excellence. And we keep saying at the beginning of the year, this is going to be the year where he breaks out and he comes up with double-digit sacks or he's blowing up everything. I'm still wouldn't have gone in any other direction. With him still on the board, it was a steal and it was a no-brainer.
Okay, so speaking of no-brainers, I think Todd Haley really wanted to scat back. This was a head-scratcher, but he was the fastest guy, right? He was the fastest guy in the 2014 draft. Dree Archer out of Kent State. Is he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? He's none of the above, apparently. 97th pick overall. I'm going to give him a D. I mean, he at least got to play a little bit.
You're generous.
I am being a little generous. I mean, you could go some straight up. I got some Fs. There's a couple of Fs here, definitely.
There are
in this draft, and I'm going to just give this a D, just based on I don't know. He just never panned out, and he was at least on the roster for for 2 seasons. I mean, that's got to matter to for something. But as far as like, you know, his kick returns and stuff like that, he did better in year 2 than year 1. You know, they had all these expectations. They tried him as a punt returner. That was absolutely miserable. You couldn't really get on the field otherwise to do much of anything else. Let me see. He appeared in 12 games. He ran the ball 10 times for 40 yards. Not great, not terrible, but considering the gadget plays he's probably in, maybe somebody else would make more of a meal out of it, especially the next pick I'm going to talk about when they were involved. 7 catches for 23 yards, not terribly exciting. No touchdowns to speak of. He had one that was taken away from him in that postseason matchup against the Ravens, where I still can't figure out what was it. Was there a phantom holding call or some other crap from, you know, our buddy Bleak? Yes, that's what his name should be, Bleak Blakeman instead of Cleet Blakeman. But yeah, you know. That's a tough one for Dre Archer. I wanted to like him, you know, because being, you know, the Ohio guy that I am, and Kent State wasn't too far away. You got some familiarity with that name over a period of time. You had other guys from Kent State, obviously, 2 big ones that made splash with the Steelers, Jack Lambert and James Harrison. So obviously Dre Archer would be the next one, and that just never materialized. So a D it is for me, an F, complete failure for you. And,
yeah, it's a big F. Big F for me. Look, Dre Archer is the poster boy for why speed doesn't necessarily kill. He played much slower than he ran. He never looked comfortable. He always looked tentative. And that supposed blazing speed that enamored Mike Tomlin and apparently Kevin Colbert just never was worth a bit. And, you know, it just, I was never in love with this pick. And at the time, I hoped that I was wrong. I hoped he could be a kickoff returner, if nothing else. But my instinct was he's a tiny little guy in a big giant man sport, and he's not going to be there. And after a very short amount of time, he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the guys who went after in this same draft. I mean, I'm even looking at the ones before, but it's not worth. That's kind of a waste of breath because, you know, we're settled on Tuitt. So you get back around to pick 97 immediately after Richard Rodgers, who's a tight end with the Green Bay Packers, Crockett Gilmore, who those of you may be familiar with as a tight end with the Ravens. They had a lineman go to the San Francisco 49ers, maybe not a need that they needed. Jalen Watkins, a DB, to the Eagles, mixed success there. Can't talk today, man. But this one will tongue-tie me. Bashad Breeland. Ooh, and I nailed it, too. DB for the Redskins. You know what? It hasn't been he's been serviceable. Maybe this is a pick that would have worked there. But then you got Devontae Freeman. You got a couple of guys who are out of the league. Then there's Bruce Ellington, a wide receiver with the 49ers. And you go down a little more, Ross Cockrell. So you start to get into the 4th round here, and you're like, nothing really jumps out on the page here. I mean, a few of these players are contributors in that. But when you get into the 4th round, you get down to pick 118, the Steelers get a wide receiver, and they get at least for a period of time, a good, if not great one, in Martavis Bryant. You talk about one thing that I immediately think of when I think of Martavis Bryant is we were just talking about Dre Archer getting like a little dump-off pass or an end around, and I could clearly remember the alien's freak ability to have a vision of the field and run up the field. Andrew Jones hit him with a quick pass, a quick slant, and he was off to the races against the Arizona Cardinals several years ago. Steelers come back and get into that game and end up winning despite Michael Vick getting hurt. We saw Martavis Bryant have some multiple touchdown games. We saw him do the flipping gymnastics catch against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then, you know, he kind of disappeared, and he got in some off-field, what do you want to say, situations. Yeah, perfect show.
Cheech and Chong. There you go, little Cheech and Chong.
Little Cheech and Chong action there. You know, Martavis getting out of the van and all the smoke, up in smoke. And, you know, I guess the best I don't know where to put this, man. I mean, I would love to say this is a B, maybe a B minus, maybe a B minus. I mean, I was just talking about availability kind of knocking you out of this. And I guess on the hindsight of this, you could say they were able to offload Martavis Bryant and get the draft pick that they used for Mason Rudolph. So that might nudge me a little bit above a C plus or something like that. I may be in that kind of territory on Martavis Bryant, but here you go. Here's a guy that was a starter and definitely was a contributor. So this draft, even despite the Dree Archer pick in the third round, pretty solid draft so far.
Yeah, like our compatriot Zachadonia is weeping in his Cocoa Puffs at the mention of Martavis Bryant. But
he's going to love the mention.
I know he loves. There's your shout out, Zachadonia.
Yeah, and we think of him all the time. We mention it once again. If you get a wide receiver that's tall, fast, and then if you start adding components like a creative player, like visor, long sleeve shirts underneath their pads, these are all the things that even if they're material things that don't mean anything.
And a fly jersey number.
Yeah,
a jersey number that's lit. Oh. He's all about the lit jersey numbers.
Number 10. Was there anything hotter than 10 though? I mean, that was
10. That's it, man.
Sangodio, I think he would probably call Santonio Holmes. Yeah. So I mean, geez, yeah, this is all right up his alley. I mean, Dree Archer had the visor game going, but he was like 5'3", so it doesn't quite count.
Yeah, doesn't work. Yeah, I'm with you. I think a B minus is where I land on Martavis. I think they knew what they were getting into when they drafted him. They knew what the potential problems were, and they hoped they could get around them. And the fact that this young man has not been able to find a way to stay out of the Cheech and Chong van and put himself on a path to be successful is unfortunate. But I will say that the wizardry of, as you said, the wizardry of getting themselves a third-round pick for a guy they picked in the fourth round from the Raiders is enough to nudge this into the B range. I'm going to stick with a B minus, but I wish this was one of those picks that could have been a home run. Looked like it was going to be a home run for a while, and then just. It's one of those like teaser fireworks, right? It goes up really fast. It's really high. It's making a lot of noise. And then when it gets to the apex of the journey, it just kind of goes pop.
Yeah. And then never to be seen again. Just disappears into the night sky with the clouds. You know what? Then they go into the fifth round, skipping over Martavis here. And, you've got this is where the F grade comes in. Shaq Richardson. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about someone smoking something. Maybe guys were just tired, as they get when you're on that final day of the draft, and they're not even showing fans announcing the picks. They're just kind of like no one's interested in what's going on. Well, Shaq Richardson maybe shouldn't even have been drafted. Never got to play. I don't think for anybody, for that matter. This was a guy that Carnell Lake vouched for, and he was from Arizona. Just nothing, I don't think. I think he may have suited up maybe once or twice where he was actually active for a game, maybe played some special teams. Maybe, even if he did that, I'm not really sure. I don't know what else there is to say about Shaq Richardson. Everybody hated the pick when it happened. I was confused. It's like, trust the process. We're going to be saying this come May. You got to trust what these guys are doing. You got to trust the process. We defended a long snapper pick, Brian.
Yes, we did.
And it blew up in our face. And correctly, we said, nope, we weren't wrong. And we know them at fault, right? We're never wrong. But I defended this one. May as well pair in the other fifth-round pick that didn't work out for the Steelers, but he's had a decent NFL career as basically a backup lineman, and this was Wesley Johnson. He's played some center. It just didn't work out for whatever reason with the Steelers. He's been with the Jets. He played last year. He appeared in 10 games. He was a 15-game starter in 2017, an 8-game starter in 2016. Sometimes for whatever reason, maybe there's just too much other talent on a roster. Maybe there's a coach or somebody, whatever be the case in the process, he slipped through the cracks, didn't work out for the Steelers. So I can't give Wesley Johnson an F grade. For the Steelers, an F grade because they got nothing with him, right? But overall, I'm going to say at least a C+. Once again, we're getting into day 3 of this draft process here. You're starting to throw some darts. Wesley Johnson, you could have probably certainly done worse at that period of time. You definitely did do worse with Shaq Richardson. So that's where I'm thinking right here, pretty much a miss in the 5th round.
Yeah, Shaq Richardson, I think we can universally declare an F. It was a swing and a miss, and I'm not sure that they even saw the pitch. but again, to look at what else was around, who else were they going to take? I'm trying to think of who was available, and they had just drafted Landry Goat the year before, so they're not going to take A.J. McCarron.
But they should have taken A.J. McCarron because he's blossomed into this Hall of Fame quarterback. That's But I mean, you could maybe see how they could get something out of an A.J. McCarron pick late in the draft. But, you've got, before they draft again, there's only like 8-10 guys that are probably half of them aren't in the league. Maybe Chris Smith, who I think has played consistent defensive end as a backup, would have been a better pick because at least he's still on a roster. But I think, Wesley Johnson is, I got my Wes's wrong. Got you confused. But, that's the Birmingham Iron now, not the Steelers.
Yeah. And with Wes Johnson, when they cut him, when they released him, everybody kind of was like, they're going to try and get him on the practice squad. And I think that's what they intended. And unfortunately, he was so versatile that somebody snapped him up. He, as you said, he's been a solid, sometimes starter, sometimes backup player, had a nice little career for himself. And I think he's maybe with the Dolphins now still.
Jets.
I don't know if he's
Jets. Yeah, I don't know if he's entering free agency or anything. I didn't go that in depth on my research here, but yeah, he played for the Jets last year.
He played for the Jets last year. He signed with the Dolphins in 2018, though. So I don't know if he's still on their roster, but I know he signed with them. Anyway, I'll go with a C.
Oh, I'm
Wesley
sorry.
Johnson.
You know what? I did. You were right. He was with the Dolphins last year. I apologize. I was looking at 2017, not 2018. I'm sorry. What's your grade for Wesley? I didn't want to confuse our listeners. I apologize for butting in. Never.
From
wrong.
the standpoint of a Steelers grade, I'm going to go D, not because he didn't pan out as a contributor elsewhere, but he didn't do jack for us. So,
true.
From that standpoint, I'm going to go D, but I think that is going to be a very common grade when you start to get down to this level of the draft.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anything you get here that's a C or better, you're knocking them. You're going to the warning track at least, so you're getting a little bit more.
Yep.
And yeah, I just got done saying, hey, well, we're never wrong. Well, I guess you're never wrong, and for me, I'm dog meat. So, the Steelers 6th round here. Here's a guy, Jordan Zumwalt, out of UCLA, that kept getting hurt, and this is where a D comes in because this guy had some flashes. I thought he had some potential. They were going to still try and shoehorn him into a 3-4, maybe probably outside linebacker, and it didn't work out because he got hurt and he was still in camps. They were still putting him on IR. They were patient, and then that patience eventually runs out. And then also in the 6th round, so you go from pick 192 to 215. Big Dan McCullers, who I probably would have had a worse grade on, had. Overall, as a player now, I guess you got to bump him over maybe at least average to above average now, Brian, for this past season. Based on who he is, he's just a big guy that's meant to, fill the gaps. And before that, you're almost looking D minus maybe. I mean, a failure is absolutely you're not on the roster. I mean, McCullers was still at least there, but he was even inactive. He was getting no snaps. He wasn't playing at all. And then he parlayed into an extra 1 year kind of prove it deal. Turned out not being so terrible for a flyer so late in the draft. So I'll give him a C. I think a C is a fair grade for Dan McCullers, especially for a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I'm going to flunk out on Zumwalt and give him a big fat F. Only because I wasn't in love with the pick. He was one of those camp phenoms that everybody fell in love with at camp, thought he was going to be the next big find, and he just didn't. Couldn't stay on the field. And I was against that pick, so I don't know that I ever would have said I saw flashes there. I would have said I saw people want to see flashes there.
Well, I mean, it's fair. I mean, you said the same thing.
We love our linebackers. What can I say?
I wasn't gonna fail him just based on injury. I mean, that kind of sucks.
No, I was kind of anti Zumwalt prior to the injuries, so I'm sticking with my F grade on that one. And I'm with you on Dan. Look, Big Dan. He still hasn't channeled his inner anger. He still hasn't found Mr. Mean, in his inner child and brought him out to play. But at least he's been. This is where you have a contributor. This is a guy who has at least been on special teams. He's been able to get into the lineup on occasion and make some contributions. Has he been above average? Has he been below average? He's been average. So I'm with you. A C on Big Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds good. And really, I mean, you look at most of the players, nobody really stands out at this far down in the process. I mean, Garrett Gilbert was taken right before Dan McCullers. I mean, he's, tearing up the AAF, so, but aside from that, I mean, there's Quincy Enunwa, but they already took Martavis Bryant. They didn't need another wide receiver. I mean, most of the names that are here, again, role players. I mean, this is what you're probably getting at this point in the draft. If you end up finding an Antonio Brown, well, you see how that's going right now. But anyways, it doesn't happen. You don't find Tom Brady's and ABs in the 6th round. That's geez, I don't even want to say exception to the rule. That's like an extreme rare occurrence of, hey, I found a diamond laying out on the sidewalk or something like that. It doesn't happen. I look up and down this board. I go into the 7th round. I'm just like, there's not a whole lot. There's just not a whole lot going on here. I mean, how far down, let me see, do we have to go to see where Rob Blanchflower, an F, I won't even get into anymore, an F, a complete failing grade. I don't know why the Steelers were like so obsessed with these, late round tight end and undrafted tight end picks for several years. Blanchflower is another one of those guys. Where was he, out of UMass? Yeah, a UMass player, a guy that probably wasn't going to even be drafted. I look at everything else that's on the board. There wasn't very many picks after him. What was he, 230 out of 256 picks that year? So, he's 26 picks from being Mr. Irrelevant. So, well, it's maybe a little harsh saying, yeah, it's an F grade. There's a lot of F grades here in the 7th round as you look at it. If you go to look at it, folks, Michael Campanaro, that played with the Ravens? I mean, that's about the best pick maybe here. There may be a few others that might kind of jump off the page for different reasons, but for the most part, there's not very much name recognition with these type of guys. These are the guys that are barely above being undrafted. I remember the criticism for Blanchflower being, why did you draft a guy that you probably could have gotten anyway? Also famous in this draft was the Michael Sam pick by the Rams for other reasons. At pick 249 near the bottom. I don't know. I don't see anybody else that would have been much of a difference there. I would guess I would have to see who else went undrafted that year and maybe made an NFL roster to make any type of determination as if they could have went any other direction. But I don't know that necessarily this was the guy that a position that was needed, at least something that they needed to spend a draft pick on. I guess it was, well, this is the best of what we got left on our board. Let's take this guy.
Yeah, I think that's what you're looking at here. Look, the guy, he just wasn't going to make it, and you could tell that almost immediately. And people, were like, what? What's his name?
Mayflower.
Blanchflower? Rob Flowers? I don't get it. But yeah, it's an F. I mean, look, it's the pick where they're at the end of the draft and they go, who do we got left, and what's left out there, and who is there maybe a chance that if somehow lightning strikes that we think we saw something we liked. And I guess they saw something, look, he answered one of the questions and made the coaches laugh, so they drafted him. I don't know.
Quite possible.
There was some reason, there was some reason that they went, hey, I remember that Blanchflower kid. Let's take him. Because there really wasn't much else left. There's a guy that was taken 2 picks later by the Colts who I actually liked and has stuck around the league. I won't mention the team he's currently with because I'm sick of them. But
does it rhyme with Hatriots?
Yes, it's the Hatriots. His name is Ulrich. And just for that alone, when you're getting down to the 7th round, I pick guys because of their names. And Ulrich John.
But wait a minute. That's exactly what the Steelers did. They
man.
said Blanchflower, and they went by name.
Yeah, but that's a punk name.
It comes earlier.
Ulrich, man.
It comes, yeah.
Ulrich is a Viking.
It does. I mean, doesn't the name Blanchflower strike fear in your heart, though? I mean, I feel bad. I shouldn't make fun of the guy by name. I mean, obviously, my name's just not pronounced properly by telemarketers. And, you've got probably
My name's Roach, so, hey.
Well, I hope they get that one right. So it's Roach, Cheech and Chong show, right?
Yes.
And, Blanchflower, at least, I guess he was on the practice squad, and then he got a futures contract, but I mean, he just never really stuck. I feel harsh talking about anybody in that type of light because anybody who gets drafted, I mean, that's quite just to make it to camp. Just to make it to camp is quite an honor.
Absolutely. It's something very few people ever accomplish. So the fact, even though we're giving these guys these grades as to how they panned out, look, they still excelled above thousands of other people.
Yeah, I mean, they rose out of the college ranks, and many guys do not. And, well, I mean, we've talked enough about the AAF stuff, but, that's basically why that exists right now is just to get some guys more tape that just aren't getting the snaps or prematurely cut, released, aren't fits with certain teams. Wesley Johnson ended up working out with more in the – I guess I clicked and just said he was an AFC East guy, but, yeah, he was with the Dolphins last year. And other guys, they never got over the injury bug or whatever, or the actual bud, so to speak, in some cases when you're talking about one of the former Killer Bees. So overall, I would say this was a solid draft for the Steelers. You got Ryan Shazier, Stephon Tuitt, and Martavis Bryant out of it. You still have another guy, Dan McCullers. What we were saying the over-under on this. I mean, we really didn't even think this through. There's another contributor there. So you had 3 starters and then a contributor. And even if you still didn't have Bryant, you still had 2 starters and a contributor. So I guess you got to say that this is a passing grade for an NFL draft.
Yeah, I would give this draft an A, even in hindsight. And some people are going to complain about because they want every pick has to be a contributor. Well, that's unrealistic and silly. If you get 2 consistent starters, and that's the top 2 picks are both hits in my opinion here with Shazier and Tuitt. You had one guy who was playing at an all-pro level, another guy who's just probably below it, and then you had Martavis, who was a freak for several years, and you really can't complain when you get 3 guys like that out of one draft. That's a successful draft. And then you have another contributor on special teams in Dan McCullers. Hey, you didn't do a bad job. You missed. I mean, this is what's funny about this. You missed on more picks than you hit, but that's because the picks that you missed on are when you expect to miss. You hit on the ones you had to, and that's the one. That's the one miss with Dree Archer in what I consider the crucial area of picks, the top 4 rounds, is unfortunate, but I think you make up for it by essentially having 3 starters in the other 3 picks in rounds 1 through 4. So I give this a draft an A, even in hindsight.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I didn't think we were still doing the grades for the entire draft. It was a thumbs up or thumbs down, passing or failing grade. But yeah, hey, I'm right with you there, buddy. So as we fly by the seat of our pants grading some of these things, we'd like to hear what you thought about the 2014 NFL draft, particularly the Steelers picks. So go ahead and drop the comments wherever you see us, be it on YouTube, somewhere else on social media, or wherever you're listening. Thanks again for subscribing. Business is booming, but I don't think we could use that word anymore. So, or at least it's on borrowed time. It's on borrowed time. Yeah. And then Jeremy Fowler too, saying that Wi-Fi has been disconnected, and it's like, oh boy, it's time to. We're going to move in some other directions. We're going to have some mock drafts coming up. Of course, we're going to look at some of these other years like 2015, 2016, 17, and then even 18, even though it gets harder to grade and comment on some of these things when guys will only have a year or two of service into the league. But a few of these drafts will be interesting to speak of. I know some people are going to have some axes to grind, and I can't wait because there'll be some hot takes coming with the next ones like that. And then we're going to continue monitoring some of this other crazy news. But trust me, we've been blue in the face about Antonio Brown. We know all of yins would love to just click on just another Antonio Brown video. Maybe if we say it enough, that they have like some type of crawlers or robots or something that'll pick it up. Or no, that's just the FBI that does that. Never mind. With your tablets and Alexas and whatnot. So anyway, it's not going to help us anymore. But when you subscribe, it does. So we appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Brian, thanks again once again for joining everyone today, including myself, buddy.
I appreciate it. It's always nice to talk some stuff and think back on happy memories.
Happy Dree Archer memories. So anyways.
No, why do you pick the one that's not happy, man?
Because I love to be miserable. I love to live in agony. And no, I don't. That's why I stay off of Twitter 9 times out of 10. Because it's like just at least we're not the professor. The professor is definitely the drama magnet. So,
oh, man.
Whoo, does he get the trolls? You would think that he tweeted when he was underneath a bridge. So anyways, until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone as always to be safe, be good, and we will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.